Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our guidance of local governments on navigating Accela and cannabis licensing webinar. My name is Maron Melican, and I'll be one of three presenters this afternoon. We are looking forward to providing a few updates and walking you through one of the local government segments of the cannabis licensing process. I would like to note that today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the OCM website and our YouTube page. So in the coming days, you'll be able to find this specifically on the OCM website on our local government page for your review. So to get us started, I would like to provide you with a brief walkthrough of our agenda for today. We will provide a general OCM update, share highlights, which can also be found on our website about current licensing operations. We'll provide a step-by-step walkthrough of the Accela guidance, share a few recommendations and next steps for local governments, and close out with your pre-submitted questions that you provided in your registration for today's webinar. This afternoon, in addition to myself, we will have Sophie Leininger, Director of Government Relations, providing local government guidance, and Ruben Dominguez, Outreach Coordinator, who will provide an Accela licensing portal walkthrough. So a few ground rules for today's presentation. The Q&A function is turned on, and we will attempt to answer questions throughout the presentation as best as we can. Questions that are not answered will be saved by our team and help us shape any updates to our FAQ page and our local government guide. Our team will go through a few of this pre-submitted questions before taking questions from the audience using that Q&A function as well. For any unanswered questions, please reach out to cannabis.info@state.mn.us. So to remind and just ground us on the Office of Cannabis Management, OCM was established to promote public health and welfare, protect public safety, eliminate the illicit market for cannabis flower, cannabis products, meet the market demand for cannabis flower and cannabis products, promote a craft industry for cannabis flower and cannabis products, and prioritize growth and recovery in communities that have experienced disproportionate negative impact from cannabis prohibition. Now I'm going to proceed to just share a few general OCM updates. So before we get into the licensing portion of the presentation, I wanted to highlight a recent program that just closed as of March 25th, 2025. OCM had announced and launched the Can Renew Community Restoration Grant to help restore communities disproportionately impacted by drug enforcement. Projects as a part of this grant proposal will address a range of community needs, including economic development, public health, violence prevention, youth development, and civil and legal aid. More information about the Can Renew grant can be found on our website on the Office of Cannabis Management's website. One additional item to note is that we are preparing for the launch of the Can Grow grant, which is another grant that'll be hosted out of the OCM within our Division of Social Equity. So to learn more about these, you can head on over to the OCM website where we can share more information. A few additional updates are all really related to the market launch for the cannabis industry, one of which being rulemaking. OCM has submitted its proposed rules to an administrative law judge for final approval on March 24th. The ALJ has 14 days to approve with changes, or disapprove the draft of the rules. Once approved by the ALJ, the final rules will be published in the state register, at which time they are adopted and in effect. If the ALJ requires changes to the draft rules, those changes will need to be resubmitted to the revisor's office for drafting into final form before publishing in the state register. OCM can begin issuing cannabis business licenses once the rules are formally adopted. More information about rulemaking can be found on the OCM website as well. The second item is regarding compacts. Compacts are intended to enhance public health and safety, ensure a safe and well-regulated medical and adult use cannabis markets, encourage economic development, and provide fiscal benefits to both tribal nations and the state. More information regarding our compacts can also be found on the OCM website. And lastly, I wanted to highlight our licensing work. OCM is currently continuing the review of applications. Approved applicants for uncapped licenses are in a position to receive licenses shortly after rules are adopted. OCM anticipates hosting lotteries in May and June for the uncapped licenses as well. Or I apologize, I just mistaken. I meant to say OCM anticipates hosting lotteries in May and June for our capped licenses. I apologize about that error. So now I will turn it over to my colleague Sophie Leininger to provide a cannabis business licensing update.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Marone said, I'm Sophie Leininger and work as the Government Relations Director here at the office. So partnering with Marone and the outreach team and many of our local partners to continue sharing guidance for the role of local governments in our licensing process. So Marone just teed it up to talk about the licensing process, and I think as many of you are tracking and aware, we have been working towards these timelines for some time now. And so we'd like to share where we're at with the licensing process and implementing in Chapter 342. So we opened for a cannabis business licensing application window. We started accepting applications on February 18th, and it closed the weekend after March 14th. So we are currently closed for cannabis business license applications and are looking at these applications now. This timeline is available on our website, but it does note, as Marone noted, that we are anticipating the lotteries for the capped licenses in May, June, but we will be able to share more, of course, as we assess how many applications we actually received and make our way through that process. In the next slide here, this is also included on the OCM website, but given the nuance involved and the different license types available in state law, there are 10 cannabis business licenses, for example, and then there are also 6 of those license types that are uncapped and 4 that are capped. And so there is a lot of variation in the license type space, and they follow slightly different processes as you move through the life cycle of an application to license. So we want to make sure to denote the difference between these license types and also the difference in which are capped and which are uncapped. These 2 columns that you see here do explain the difference between these license types. I will note that the limits, those caps, the numbers you see in the table for the meso business, cultivator, manufacturer, and retailer, these are specifically detailed in state law. So these are statutory caps. They exist through July 1st, 2026 is when it details the caps to be in impact for. And so after July 1, 2026 is when the office has the authority to sort of assess market dynamics, assess what is needed in a supply chain dependent industry. So these are the caps here. I don't think this is new information from what's on our website, so I'll keep moving through, but wanted to make sure to call this out, and it is available on our website for folks to reference. Then based on the window that we just ran, in combination with when we accepted applications for 9 of the cannabis business licenses earlier last year, we have in our queue 3,529 applications. And so these are for cannabis businesses across the 10 license types. We also have included on our website a breakdown of how many applications between those 2 license types in the case that is of interest for folks, as you want to see how many applications are for a cannabis retailer, for example, or a cannabis micro business, which we've highlighted here on the screen for you. So we do have 1,849 applications for a cannabis micro business. And I'll go back a slide just to note that a cannabis micro business, there is no cap. And so this license type is not subject to a lottery selection, and they will be reviewed on a qualified basis and not subject to a lottery. I will also note, and you can check this out in our local government guidebook, that OCM launched this summer that we detail the allowable activities of each license type. And so a cannabis microbusiness in law would be allowed to cultivate, manufacture, and retail sale their products specific to certain limitations on that license type. So those specific limitations are available on our website and also highlighted in the local government guidebook. Then this is a newer graphic that we have put together and wanted to highlight for all of our local government partners in particular. We know that in state law, the process to move from a prospective applicant or someone interested in a cannabis business all the way to having a cannabis license, and also for those doing retail, a local retail registration, for example, that's a long process for an applicant to move through. And so we have taken what is required in state law and that we have set up in our application guidance, and we have taken it and put it into what we call the life cycle of an applicant through the application to license phase. And you'll see that a lot of this details what the applicant is responsible for along the way. It details where OCM is going to review applications. There is the split, step 2A, step 2B, where an applicant in a capped license category, for example, will be subject to a lottery process. But if they are an applicant who is qualified in a non-capped license base, an uncapped license, then they continue on a different path that is not subject to a lottery selection. But you'll also see all applicants for cannabis business licenses are subject to background checks, and OCM will be overseeing that process. Once an application has moved past being reviewed for initial due diligence and initial qualifications in the requirements in the application, and they are selected in the lottery or deemed qualified either after step 2A or step 2B, they then complete a background check. At that phase, after a background check and a submission of a labor peace agreement for the license types that is required for, they would receive a preliminarily approved applicant status. So this is the term that I think many local partners will be looking for is when applicants have an official preliminary approved applicant status. This means OCM has done that initial review of the application. They have met qualified standards, submitted the background check, and passed those final pieces at that stage. Then, once rules are in effect, the adult use rules are in effect, which we are still, as Marone noted, awaiting final adoption. We do not yet have word back from the administrative law judge about those steps, but we're all, I think, anxiously awaiting. We will then be able to see applicants move to step 3. And so that's why it's highlighted here on this diagram for you. And I do know this is probably much smaller font than is recommended for a PowerPoint, but it is available for download on our website, and we'll be sure to include it after so that you all can take a look here. But step 3 is then where an applicant with preliminary approval status, they're able to finalize their site location, finalize updating their materials based on that location, and also work really closely with local governments on that next step, which is a zoning compliance certification check. Our applicant guidebook also encourages applicants at this stage and even earlier to be conversing with local governments to understand what the process will be for a local government to give an affirmative zoning compliance certification, and also, if retail, a local retail registration. Those two processes are distinct between a zoning compliance certification check and a local government issuing a local retail registration. So we want to be sure that applicants are having those conversations early with all of you so that they can understand the specific processes that your local entities may have in place in order to achieve those two steps from a local government. So that is where step 3 takes place. They're able to secure their location, as I noted, and complete their what is called a site registration. So they will log into the licensing software, which is what Ruben will get into much later in this presentation, and be able to signal that they are prepared for their zoning compliance certification check and the review of their final materials. It is at this stage that we are really, really encouraging applicants to be sure they are ready for this site registration, as they do have 18 months with preliminary approval status to complete steps 3 and 4 and 5. So they do have a window, and so we are encouraging folks to be sure they are ready and working with their local government prior to initiating step 3. So then you'll see that there, and if in a local government down as you make your way through step 3, if a local government with zoning authority for that proposed business certifies zoning compliance, the applicant would be able to move on to step 4, which OCM will conduct a pre-licensure inspection. At that stage, they will also, if all things continue to check out, pay a license fee, and they will be issued a cannabis business license. It's noted in small font for just the purposes of this graphic, but we are really stressing it in our application guidance that a license is required for all cannabis businesses, but for those licensees conducting retail sales, they will also need, in addition to their license, a local retail registration. And so that process is detailed in Minnesota statutes section 342.22. We have included guidance on that for all of our local partners to be establishing that process, and that process is done specifically between the applicant and the local government with authority to issue a local retail registration. And I'm in charge of my slides. Okay, so the next phase that we want to talk about is how to complete that zoning certification process. The local zoning certification process will occur in our Accela licensing software system. So Accela is known as the OCM Citizen Portal. It is the licensing software system that we have used to set up the process for license applications, and it is the format in which we will complete the zoning compliance verification check. And so statute requires OCM to check with a local unit of government on a proposed business is compliance with zoning, and so we are utilizing Accela to do that and to be able to forward the application to the appropriate and applicable local unit of government to review that site registration for zoning compliance. So, and it's noted here in the slide, and I think it's helpful. There are a few questions about what that creating an Accela account for a local government partner looks like, and it is the citizen account. Those are the correct terms you're hearing. So licensees will use Accela to apply, pay, and complete their site registration. They also, this is where they submit any required forms. Local governments will use Accela to complete zoning compliance verification checks. This is where the viewing of the cannabis business application occurs for the entity with zoning compliance, and then also where they can view the site registration of where the applicant has selected their proposed business address and identified the correct local unit of government. So we are hoping to clarify today and to provide some additional guidance for folks about how to create an Accela account, but also how to navigate the Accela account once we are at the stage of step 3, to reference the life cycle graphic, once we are at the stage of site registrations. And to be clear, we are not there yet. We need to have rules in place, as Marone and I have noted. So we want to make sure to prepare this guidance in anticipation of that process. But we are not there yet as of March 31st. So an Accela account will be necessary for a local unit of government who is responsible for the zoning compliance or certifying a proposed business compliance with zoning laws and zoning codes. So if you are a local government, a city, county, or township who is responsible for that zoning authority, would like to retain that zoning authority, should be filling out our contact and delegation form that OCM launched earlier this winter to try to capture a better understanding of the appropriate authorities at the local government level, and also creating an Accela account. We have launched guidance, a how-to guidance document to support local governments in creating an Accela account, and we will be launching a part 2 of that guidance to help folks be able to navigate Accela once inside. And we're gonna again note it on this slide that local retail registration is distinct from certification of zoning compliance, and so retail registration, applicants need to have a local retail registration with their local government, is distinct of zoning compliance certification. So depending on how local governments have set up these two processes and which entity holds the authority for each one, we really encourage between cities and townships and counties conversations and sorting through the applicable authority and then denoting those decisions for OCM through the contact and delegation form. So, for example, if a township did not have zoning authority regarding proposed businesses or a proposed cannabis business and instead would defer to the county to certify that business's zoning compliance with local ordinances, they may opt out of creating an Accela account if they have noted for OCM that the county, their identified county, should be the entity receiving those zoning compliance certification checks. Okay, and this I know has small font as well, but we will make sure to get this out to all of you in a way that you can digest and assess more easily. But this details the process for zoning compliance certification. So zoning compliance certification is detailed in Minnesota statute section 342.13 as well as 342.14. And so these are the sections of statute I think it's helpful to reference because it is the basis for how OCM has set up this flow of communication. And I will also note that is also the distinction from 342.22, which sets up the process for local retail registration. So these our workflow of checking for zoning compliance certification, we will notify through the Accela portal. And so Accela will create an email and send it to the local unit of government and this email is generated through the Accela licensing portal, which is also why we're really encouraging folks to sign up now in advance of any possible notifications. So the email will come through the Accela portal. And as we noted, this only occurs once applicants have received preliminary approval. So they have done the initial stages of the application, passed a background check, have identified their site, hopefully, if they have followed the guidance, have already been in contact with local governments as to how this process will work. Then they will submit their site registration, which will trigger the request for zoning compliance certification. So applicants are the ones who identify the local unit of government, and that way then OCM notifies through the Accela account to that correct local government. And then per state law, local units of government have 30 days to respond to this email notification, and they will access the actual record in the Accela account through the email notification. So I'm noting this timeline because it is in state law and we have built this workflow around that requirement, but it is also why we are really encouraging early conversations across the board. We are all doing this for the first time, the state, local government partners, and applicants. And so we really encourage as many early conversations as possible to have a better understanding of how each local government may be setting up their process. Okay, and I think I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Ruben, who will continue to go in more of the nitty-gritty of the Accela licensing portal.
Hi, folks. So, as said, yeah, in this portion, we're actually going to walk through how to complete a zoning compliance request after you receive that initial email that was mentioned in the last slide. So we can just dive right into it.
Ruben, I believe you're muted.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that, guys. So, as you at first assign on to Accela, you will press Search Applications, and under this portion, you'll be able to view all the applications and the records assigned to you. Now, to complete any zoning request, there are 3 items that we have to look at. The first one would be the site of registration, and then the business application, as well as the approval request form. So we can see in that clip that we're going on to search applications, identifying the 3 items. So the site registration, business application, and finally the request form that we have to complete. So following this, once we are ready to go, we will be able to begin the first process, which is to view the site of registration. Now, under this, please use the please use the corresponding record and number present in the project name to find the associated record. So in this demo, we are going to be using a micro L24 and 5401, a bit of a long one. Unfortunately, they are all about the same length. But if we use a record to identify the site registration, once we click on it, we can view the location, as well as any additional details, including contacts, some of the application info, and if available, the parcel information. So again, we are going to be finding the matching a record ID to find the site registration. And in a similar process, and let's say that you want to see more information besides just the actual location, you also have the option to view the full application that was submitted to OCM. And to do so, we are going to use the same record number to find the application. And once we have done so, we are going to click on it, and this will bring us to the application screen. Under this page, we will be able to view the applicant info, additional context that may have not been present in the last slide, as well as the full application form, and again, parcel information. If we scroll all the way back to the top, we can also see the payments that they have made, as well as any payments that are to come, and additionally, any conditions of approval that they have yet to meet or have already met. So with all that being said, let's say that we are now ready to complete our first zoning compliance request. We are going to go back onto the home screen of Accela and find the request form that was mentioned in the first slide. So to do so, we're going to identify the same record ID, a micro L245402, and press resume application. On this screen, we will have two options. We can press compliant to all parts, which will then remove all the other options, or we can press non-compliant, in which a text box will appear where we can list which ordinance the applicant is not in compliance with. Following this, we can go on to the second page, where we will be prompted to review our choice. So once again, in this demo, we have said yes, but we can also make an edit and go back and change if we want. Please note that if we select save and continue, that will be our final submission for this record, and meaning that whatever we choose on that screen is what will be turned into OCM for either approval or for non-approval. Based on our choice, we will then receive a final screen with a confirmation of our choice in Accela. Please save the ID at the bottom left corner of your screen for your own record. I will also note that this is not the end for the applicant. There are still additional steps to take based on what you may have chosen. So if the applicant is compliant with all the zoning requirements, OCM will inform them of their approval, and then we'll have to schedule a site inspection. And if the applicant passes the site inspection and they pay all their fees, they're well on their way to becoming a fully licensed applicant. Now, let's say the applicant was not compliant with all the portions in zoning. OCM will reach out to the applicant and tell them, as well as inform them of their options. The applicant will then retain their approval status, but must restart the site registration process. And to do so, they must either work with the same local government in order to become compliant, or they will have the option to change their locations entirely. So again, you have two options based on what they get for the zoning requirement. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it back over to my colleague, Miron, for the next steps.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruben and Sophie. So now I am going to walk you through some next steps that are available for local governments. I also just want to note that I know you guys are submitting a number of questions, and so we're hoping that we answered some of them throughout the presentation, but we're trying our best to be able to answer them in real time in the Q&A. If we are unable to get to any of your questions, we will be downloading all of them. And if they are specific to a municipality, we of course would reach out to you directly. Otherwise, we'll use them to inform our guidance. So in just thinking about general next steps, as my colleagues had mentioned a bit earlier, if you have not already done so, please complete the contact and delegation form and register for Accela. The email submitted can be the identified person's government email or shared government email to allow for relevant staff at a locality to receive the notification that Sophie and Ruben had just mentioned. The second thing we would really recommend that you do is please read the local government guide for further details on what locals can expect from cannabis businesses. This guide really does walk you through the A to Z about the local government process within the cannabis licensing, as well as has a number of just helpful tidbits. We continuously are updating it. And so we always recommend that folks check out the local government webpage on the OCM website to be able to get the most up-to-date information. There will always be a date that's associated with that local government guide as well, so that you can make sure that you're receiving the most up-to-date information. On that same webpage, the local government webpage, is where you will find a copy of the guidance. So everything that we're discussing today is going to be in a guidance form for you to be able to walk through. So we are not expecting anybody to have memorized everything that we've walked through today. We will have that step-by-step guidance available for you, as well as a copy of this webinar for you to be able to use as you're navigating through this process. And then, of course, reaching out to us. We know that it is not always the easiest process, and so we want you all to be able to reach out to us and use us as support as you are navigating this process for your locality. The next thing that we want to just share with you is just the maintaining and updating of Accela. Please note that every local government is responsible for updating their Accela account with the most current email if any staffing changes occur. For example, we know that a number of you have already signed up and filled out the contact and delegation form and created your Accela accounts. However, we also recognize that staffing changes occur. And so we encourage you to reach out to us if that is the case. Users are able to change their contact information, such as the phone number or email associated with their account. So first, you may log onto your Accela account, then select Account Management from the top of the screen. Then you can select Edit on the panel with login information to update passwords or security questions. Under Contact Information, select the blue Actions dropdown. You may have to scroll sideways in order to view it, and select View. You can then update your address, email, or phone number associated with your account. And if you do need any assistance in this process, again, do not hesitate to reach out to us at cannabis.info@state.mn.us, as we recognize that changes happen and that this is a new process for everyone. And so we want to make sure that we are making it as easy as possible for you. And so again, as contact information changes, as potential staffing changes occur, please reach out to us so that we can make sure that we have your most up-to-date information, so that when these notifications go out, they are going out to a email address that currently exists and that your staff are able to receive it. We also just wanted to name a few common issues that we've recognized when creating an Accela account. Accela has a few issues regarding registering emails that contain a hyphen symbol. If this occurs, please reach out to cannabis.info@state.mn.us, and we'll try our best to work with you to resolve that. If you have created multiple accounts and would like to delete one, please reach out to us again at that cannabis.info@state.mn.us, and our team members will be able to deactivate one of the accounts. And to update the point of contact at your office, please resubmit the contact and delegation form and Accela account registration process. OCM will use your most recent submission. Note, this would not automatically update your Accela account, however. And so we really do encourage you to fill out these forms, but also reach out to us at cannabis.info@state.mn.us so that we can make sure that we've been tracking it and that we can ensure that you are receiving the most up-to-date that we have the most up-to-date contact information for you, and that you are able to receive the notifications once we get to that part. So now we are going to walk through some of your pre-submitted questions. I first just want to thank you all, because you certainly sent us quite a lot, which is helpful, because for us, it just reminds us that one, we are not perfect and that we don't have all of the information out there, but you submitting questions to us allows us to understand what additional guidance can we provide, what still seems unclear about this process, and how can we work together to ensure that as we're all navigating this new process, that we are providing as much clear guidance as possible. I will say that every question that you guys submit really does inform all of our guidance. And so please continue to do it. Don't hesitate to reach out to us, whether it's to Sophie, Ryan, Ruben, or myself, or through our cannabis.info inbox. And we want to be able to resolve those types of questions and provide clearer guidance, because if one person's asking it, then 300 other people are probably asking it as well. So I'm going to walk through our pre-submitted questions. Again, we are trying our best to respond to the questions that are in the Q&A as well. If we don't get to your question in the Q&A, please just be aware that we will try our best. If it is municipality or county or city specific, we'll reach out directly to you. Otherwise, we will use those questions to update our FAQs and our guidance on our website. So I will just get started with the first question that was submitted. Will local governments be proactively notified of licenses and need to conduct zoning review / retail registration, or will we need to log into Accela to check for pending items? When a preliminary approved applicant submits their site registration, they will also need to identify and select the local government with zoning authority of the proposed location where they intend to operate in. Once this occurs, the local government will be notified via email associated with their Accela account that they have a new zoning certification compliance request to review. Additionally, if the local government has not responded within 15 days, OCM will send a follow-up notification to that same email account informing them that they have 15 days remaining to respond to the zoning certification compliance request. This is the process for zoning compliance certification. OCM will not be notifying a local unit of government if there is a retail registration request. This process is handled directly by the local unit of government responsible for managing retail registrations for cannabis businesses as outlined in Chapter 342.22. Our next question was, if a city in the county has developed its own zoning and are allowed at least the minimum required number of licenses for the county, are we allowed to deny licenses in all other areas of the county and direct businesses to the city? Local governments are not required to limit retail registrations. According to Chapter 342.13, a local government that issues retail registrations may, by ordinance, only limit the number of cannabis retailers and micro businesses / meso businesses with retail endorsements allowed within their locality, as long as there is at least one retail location per 12,500 residents. If a county has one active registration for every 12,500 residents, a city or town within the county is not obligated to register a cannabis business. If a city has not delegated registration authority to the county and allows more than the county allows, the county may count those registrations toward the amount of allowed retail businesses in their county. Again, I know that this is also a lot of information, so all of this will be on our website and you guys will be able to take a look at this afterwards. But we will just keep going. Our next question was, if a municipality in my county receives an application for a cannabis business, will I, the county, receive notice of that application regardless of zoning authority? And the answer here is only the local government with zoning authority, which the applicant identifies, will be notified via email for the request of zoning certification compliance. The process for local retail registration is determined by each local unit of government. If a city will be responsible for certifying zoning compliance but has delegated retail registration authority to the county, we encourage working collaboratively between the city and the county to identify process for establishing the retail registration process and communicating with prospective applicants about which entity is responsible for which process. Cities and counties should also notify OCM of appropriate authorities for both the zoning compliance process and the retail registration process. The next question is, when I log in, it states I have a citizen account. Is that correct? This is correct. Both licensed applicants and local governments will use the same platform, Accela, or the OCM Citizen Portal, to complete each of their required tasks related to cannabis businesses. This is the licensing software for OCM. It is an off-the-shelf product that the office has utilized to stand up the licensing framework. The next question is, what are the responsibilities of cities with any zoning changes and licenses? And the answer here is local governments play a critical role in the licensing process, serving as a near final approval check on cannabis on cannabis businesses nearing the awarding of a state license for operations. Once an applicant has been vetted by OCM and is selected for proceeding in the verification process, they are then required to receive the local government certification of zoning compliance and/or local retail registration before operations may commence. When a business is up for license renewal, the office will verify with the city that they are still in compliance with zoning as well as local retail registration. The next question was, please address situations where a certification is requested for a site, but building improvements need to be made, i.e. a new ventilation system, ADA accessibility, etc. OCM recommends that all applicants with preliminary approval engage in conversations with the local government with zoning authority before they submit their site registration in Accela. When reviewing the zoning certification compliance request, the local government will have the ability to select one of the following options if the preliminary approved applicant does not meet all the local ordinances. These include non-compliant with local zoning and land use ordinances, non-compliant with state building code, non-compliance with fire code, or disapproved for other reasons. By selecting any of these options and listing the specific ordinances that the site does not meet, the local can disapprove a zoning certification compliance request. An applicant retains preliminary approval status if their zoning compliance certification does not pass. Who is completing the background checks, the state or the city? The law requires qualified applicants to undergo a background check during the state's application process. OCM is overseeing this process. Pursuant to Minnesota Session Law 2024, Chapter 121, Article 2, all qualified applicants for a business license must undergo a comprehensive local and national criminal background check conducted by a third-party consumer reporting agency or background screening company. OCM's licensing division will verify the background checks submitted to the state. The background check process is required to be done prior to an applicant completing the site registration phase of the process. I will say on our OCM website, we do have a page that is dedicated specifically to background checks. And so if this is of interest, please check out our website. I believe it's under our licensing section in which you can learn a bit more about some of the guidance that we've provided around background checks. The next question is, will cities continue to license low-dose cannabis, or does OCM manage all of it? For Minnesota statute, Chapter 342.45 and Chapter 342.46, lower potency hemp edible licenses, that being the retailer and the manufacturer, will be administered by OCM. OCM is planning to open for licensing for these two license types in fall of 2025. Until then, we understand local licensing regimes may continue until state licenses are issued. More information on these license types will be available for fall of 2025. Lower potency hemp retailers also must receive both a license from OCM and a local retail registration per Minnesota statutes, Chapter 342.22. similar to what we see with cannabis retailers. Local units of government will be responsible for determining the local retail registration process. A local unit of government is not able to limit the issuance of local retail registrations to lower potency hemp edible retailers. Our next question is, do townships need to adopt a cannabis ordinance even if they do not intend to adopt the county's ordinance? Or is an ordinance merely required to be adopted before any cannabis businesses can be licensed in the township? For example, can townships wait until there is actually a party who is interested in establishing a cannabis business in their township? As authorized in Section 342.13, establishing local governments, ordinances, or cannabis businesses in a timely manner is critical for the ability of local cities or towns to establish local control as described in the law and is necessary for the success of the statewide industry and the ability for local governments to protect public health and safety. The issuance of local zoning compliance certifications and local retail registrations to prospective cannabis licenses is also dependent on local ordinances. OCM recommends that all local governments be proactive in developing their ordinances in anticipation of potential cannabis business applicants. OCM has developed a model ordinance and local government guidebook to support local partners engaging in this work. And I will just note that we will make sure, once we get this webinar posted online, as well as additional guidance materials, that we will send all of this information, including our local government guidebook, to all the participants of this webinar today. The next question is, for cities who are delegating authority to the county for cannabis management, who would be the point of contact? Do I still need to fill out an Accela registration for my city, though we've delegated authority to the county? If a city is delegating their zoning authority, including ability to certify a proposed business's compliance with local zoning and building codes to the county, then all zoning compliance certification requests will be sent to the county. If the county does not respond to OCM's request for certification of compliance within 30 days, the cannabis law allows the process to move forward potentially. Any city who has chosen to delegate their zoning authority will then not need to create an Accela account, as they will not be receiving any request for zoning compliance certification. Please note that local retail registration is distinct from certification of zoning compliance processes, and retail registration will not occur through the Accela portal. OCM requires that all local governments fill out the local unit of government cannabis licensing contact and delegation form to inform OCM of the appropriate authorities for both processes, zoning compliance certification and retail registration. And again, we'll make sure that this is spelled out in our follow-up communication to you all. Our next submitted question was, am I understanding this correctly? Once an applicant gets pre-approval from OCM, they will be able to go through any land use process, no matter how long the timeline, for example, conditional use permit approval, to secure their business location and will not lose their spot, correct? And the response here is, once an application is approved, the applicant will be deemed a preliminary approved applicant. Upon receiving this status, the applicant has 18 months to convert their preliminary approval to full licensure. As a part of this conversion process, the applicant will need to complete the following steps below in order to be granted licensure. Update application documents and submit final site location, local zoning compliance certification, site inspection, and if applicable, local retail registration. For more information, we do encourage folks to check out the Qualified Applicant Guide to Obtaining a License, as it really is a walkthrough, a step-by-step walkthrough from the licensee perspective of all of the things that they need to complete and all of the tasks that they're required to finish in order to obtain a license. An applicant who completes site registration but does not receive a positive certification of compliance of their location with zoning ordinances will retain their preliminary approval status as an applicant. They will have to resubmit their site registration portion in order to proceed. I think we are coming towards one of the last questions, but do there have to be available lots in the zone chosen for cannabis businesses? Is it acceptable to only allow cannabis businesses in the industrial zone? And the response here is OCM has developed a model ordinance and local government guidebook to support local partners. This guidebook recommends that cannabis businesses should be zoned under existing zoning ordinances in accordance with the license type or endorsed activities held by the cannabis business. State law does not restrict how a local government conducts its zoning designations for cannabis businesses, provided that such restrictions do not prohibit the establishment or operation of cannabis businesses. For more information, please review page 13 of the Guide for Local Governments on Adult Use Cannabis. And again, we'll make sure that we share this directly with you all so that you are able to see each of these references as you are making some of your decisions within your locality. And so that is everything for all of our pre-submitted questions. Again, I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to um, both spend time with us as well as submit all of these questions. We did our best to combine a number of the questions as some of them kind of related to one another. We also tried our best to ensure that we address the questions throughout the presentation. We will take all of the questions that you may have submitted in the chat and both use them to inform our guidance on our webpage. Update our FAQ page. We really do update that in real time, as well as if there are specific questions that sound like they're locality specific, we can do direct follow-up with you specifically if it seems as though your questions have not been answered yet. Again, if you have more questions that you still want to address or things that you think were still unclear, please email us at cannabis.info@state.mn.us and we will do our best to be able to get back to you. I will make sure that in the next couple days, we'll have this webinar posted on the web as well as a guidance document that really is a step-by-step of everything that we discussed today. And we will have emails that will go out to everyone that participated today to make sure that we were able to address all of your questions and really get this guidance out. Again, thank you guys so much for participating this afternoon, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.